Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Super Meat Boy. This is Mr. Devious, or just Deeb, and today we're going to be moving on to Chapter 2, The Hospital. That right there was Castlevania there in the opening. I think that one was pretty obvious, but not everybody knows it. So again, same layout as the forest, just a little darker than before. We're away from the pretty, innocent little forest and in this creepy, barren wasteland. Well, it's not so much a wasteland. I mean, it's full of those dirty needles, some of which have smiles on them. So immediately starting with Biohazard, the first level, this is where the game actually really starts to pick up in difficulty. And this level in particular isn't too bad, but it does have some tricky jumps that do take some maneuvering. Also, this reminds me, just as I beat this level and don't get the A+, that I went back and A+'d all of the levels in the forest so that I could get the 100% true ending at the end of the game. Since I don't really feel that it's necessary to throw all of that, to show all that on screen, I think that that'll more or less speak for itself. I am going to get that bandage, or I am going to die trying. Either way, I'm doing as I promise. I'm not sure what these things in the middle are, if they're just big tubes that are dumping syringes, or something, or where they're going, or what they had in them. You know, it's interesting, because in this level, in the hospital, the main hazard is medical waste. And I remember reading that Bandage Girl herself is a pile of medical waste, and that is very interesting. So what makes her different from, say, these dirty needles? I mean, I guess maybe she's not pointy. And I suppose that would probably be enough. You know, usually this level doesn't even cause me that much trouble, it's just something. Of course, every level gets a little bit harder when you start going for the bandage and starting to try and make those little close jumps. And then jump over here, and then over there. See, that wasn't so bad, and even managed to get the grade A+ on that one. Oh, I should have showed that replay. Ah, well, there'll be plenty of opportunities later. This one has low-hanging ceilings. Apparently, there's some fluids and needles leaking through, I think. Ew. Now here's a gimmick that is interesting to say the least. Every new world usually introduces some kind of gimmick. The hospital, here's one of them, is fans. And fans are very tricky to maneuver, because the closer you get to the blades, the further up they'll push you. But the closer you get to the blades, the more likely you are to get jibbed into thousands of tiny little bits. This is another one of those levels that you just gotta leave to faith. And there, down there, we have a bandage. That isn't immediately obvious at first, but what do you want? We're gonna get that one too. We're gonna get all of the bandages. I don't care if I have to speed up footage to show it all. We're gonna get them all. By the way, the hospital probably has some of my favorite music in the game, Beatus Blues. Actually, this game has some of my favorite music. I really like the composer for this game, as well as one of Edmund Macmillan's other games, Binding of Isaac. He's just such a good indie composer. I'll put the name up because I don't honestly think I can remember how to pronounce it off by heart. But, oh great, so we died, so we have to get that bandage again. It must not be fun. I mean, aside from the fact that Meat Boy is a boy with no skin, he's not just a cube of meat, he's a boy who has no skin. And now he's expected to run around in places that have dirty needles and fans And that isn't too tricky, you just kind of glide across it. It's certainly easier than the rest of the level, which isn't that hard either, but what can you do? Run against the winds, they're too rough, so we gotta jump! And that's still not enough. Gotta find the nice line between getting over the gap without throwing yourself into the fan's blade. Get up here. Watch Bandage Girl get punched into oblivion. Now, each world tends to introduce a new enemy type. These are, I'm gonna call them blood clots, because that's what I think they're supposed to be. I don't know, the enemy types in this game tend to be really weird. Not that I don't mind, I mean, it kind of fits with the whole thing. They're just weird. They just tend to move about slowly, blocking off passageways, and they're very easy obstacles, especially compared to some of the later enemies. Silhouette levels are some of my favorite. Any game that has a silhouette level, they just tend to look so very pretty, so stylistic, and they're great. Kind of reminds me of Donkey Kong Country Returns. I love the silhouette levels in that game too. Of course, obviously that was an entirely different kind of game, but yeah, these levels are far and few between. They tend to run a little better, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's easier to process just all black than anything else. And up here, we have a warp zone. So apparently the biggest surprise here is that Bandage Girl wears shoes. This is Jill from Mighty Jill-Off, an indie game that I never played, but it's freeware on the internet if you just look it up. So go on and give it a try if you're interested. I'm not sure if this really matches her gameplay because, again, I never played Mighty Jill-Off, but as a character in Super Meat Boy, she's very handy. By repeatedly tapping the jump button, she can glide, and this allows for making several precision jumps a lot easier. It gives you a lot more room for error, and just generally, as far as characters go, she's, along with Commander Video, one of the more useful ones. They tend to give you, well actually, let's be honest, the red character warp zones, the characters you unlock through the warp zones in each world, tend to be the best characters in the game, in my opinion. One of them's kind of weird, but, well, he has his uses too, if he is a he. I tend to use Jill in some of the final levels of the game, just because her ability is that practical. Slow descents are great. She's also a bit faster than Commander Video. Not as fast as Meat Boy, but there are very few characters in this game that are as fast as Meat Boy. Now that wasn't supposed to happen. Hop up here. Sloppy performance. Shoddy performance. Probably because I'm on camera, but what can you do? Worst case scenario, I'll just speed up takes that are taking too long or skip past them. It's not gonna be that big of an issue. Although, thinking ahead, there are gonna be certain segments where the game actually does get pretty hard that I'm pretty terrified by. Spikes everywhere. Normally a jump like this is possible with Super Meat Boy, but like that, but it would be easier to just use her ability. But sometimes it's just easier to fall. So you just gotta be patient, take your time, and there we go. Shut up, Toad. Back to the Sabbath. The level names in this game are really weird. I'm not sure what is the basis for most of them, if they were just random. Some of them make sense. I mean, the first level in the game is called Hello World, and, well, that's kind of like introducing you to the game, and Sometimes the naming makes sense, sometimes it's a bit more cryptic. I don't try to read into it too much, because that would be silly. Let's see here. Oh, bigger blood clots, with teeth even. It's kind of gross, but blood. I don't think this hospital is up to code. In fact, it seems kind of... Wait, what am I doing? Why am I exiting to map? Because I said that when I unlock a new character, I will use them. And I didn't use Jill. Also, that said that she was a pervert. Well, she licks shoes. That's kind of the joke. So up she goes, gets the keys. Another instance in which Jill is very useful is with these fans, because you can slow her descent so you can get close enough to the bottom of the flame blade to get the optimal push from them without just directing plunging into the blades and getting chopped into bits. Here's a fun little... Actually, I really like these sections. Occasionally you'll get keys that unlock long strings of blocks like this, and they'll force you to run as fast as you can to complete a level. And right, the hospital introduces keys too, doesn't it? Which level am I on? Oh, I know what that is. I see you. That is definitely a warp zone down there. And I am not gonna miss it. But it would help if I got the key that unlocked the warp zone. That would certainly help my case. Not all the characters in the game explode in the way Meat Boy does. That is to say, none of them explode the way Meat Boy does. Now, in this case, I think I might have to switch to Meat Boy just because he's fast enough to get over to that key as it falls. There are those little prongs up on the ceiling. I'm not sure what those are about. And there we go! Warp zone number 5, I believe. And a Game Boy warp zone, too. I do believe that most of these little images before each warp zone, the non-character warp zones, is supposed to be sort of a reference to another game, sort of like how the opening to each world is a reference to another game. But I don't recognize most of them. Did I just get a bandage? I think I did, which is interesting. How am I alive? I should not be alive down here, but I am alive, and I will take it. Because in these warp zones, you cannot risk to waste the lives. You lose one life, and then you just kind of start losing them. And that gets really annoying when you get to, say, the last level in a set, after working so hard to complete the first two. I'm actually thinking of a couple of warp zones at the end of the game, where the first two levels are hard enough, and then the last one isn't as hard, but it's still difficult enough that it will totally ruin your dreams and make you sad and cry and tears. Now let's come back and do this level the proper way, which becomes infinitely easier when we're not trying to find a warp zone and just interested in getting our blood everywhere. No, we're really here for Bandage Girl. The jibbing is just a bonus. Blood, blood, blood. Dark. You know, actually, this world does have more than a few silhouette levels. Were there any in the forest? I don't think there were. Ulcer, pop. You know, because of the name of this level, I call these things ulcers. These little things that bounce around in diagonal directions. I don't even know if that's their official name. I don't think it is. But I just call them ulcers. Do I know what an ulcer looks like? Not really. This is also one of those frustrating levels where they put the bandage at the beginning and then you have to do the level twice. Technically 3 times if you count having to backtrack. Not that this is a hard level, not by many means, but there's a lot of backtracking involved. And there's a warp zone level that does this, and I hate it. I hate it so very much. But that's a hurdle we'll jump when we get to it. In my original run-through of the game, I was not able to do that warp zone for the longest time, and I just gave up on that one, but eventually I did it. And then all runs after that went more smoothly, if nothing else. But that's just how it goes. You do something enough times, you get better at it. You get better, less sloppy, until finally you're getting things in fewer goes more quickly, and the game only lasts a couple hours, if even that, as opposed to several hours of trying the same levels over and over again. But I do love games like that. I do love games like this that are about frustrating difficulty, that train you to get better and better until you have mastered what you're doing. I'm thinking of Dark Souls now. I love Dark Souls. It's not the perfect comparison, not by any means, but it's certainly a game that takes several tries and several deaths, much like this one does. Just want to keep from falling into the fans and the blood, and there she is. Bandage Girl is gone. Now, if I do believe correctly, and, well, I do believe, there should be another warp zone in this level. Last one we'll be doing in this episode, and there it is up there. Often, they'll hide a warp zone behind some stuff in the foreground. That's an absolutely troubling title screen. For some reason, when I think about this game, it's this level that really sticks out in my mind. This warp zone, at least. Something about it. Maybe I was just stuck on it for longer than I should have been, but there we go. First, we have to go outside. Well, actually, it probably would have been better if I just went up there and got the key. And I died. Gotta remember to play more carefully in these sections because they're a lot less forgiving than the normal sections of the game. And again, they're not as hard normally, but, well, only 3 tries per level. And if you mess them up, you get to start over. Now that was my fault. That was just not looking ahead. But these blood clots look so much cuter than their counterparts. That's really gross, but look at them. You could just say they're slimes, red slimes. They don't have to be masses of blood. I mean, Meat Boy's certainly leaving enough blood behind to make these things. Then we get to... Actually, I think in a lot of warp zones, the first level tends to be one of the harder ones. And then the ones after it aren't as bad. Not most of the time. Unless the levels are short enough that they can afford to be difficult. I'm thinking mostly of Atari, some of the Atari warp zones, which, by God, some of them are absolutely very difficult. And that was just unlucky timing. Blood clot. Why do you hate me, blood clot? I do not hate you. Oh, oh, oh. Slipping and falling, which is kind of the name of the game sometimes. No, the name of the game is Super Meat Boy. But, aren't I funny? I'm not. Again, gotta be careful because this is my last life on the last level in this set. And that's done. That is done and taken care of. Moving on to 2:15. Well, we were already here, but this time we're just focusing on the level and avoiding the ulcers. Some levels do offer very slight alternate paths, and they're few and far between, but it's a nice little touch. Here you can usually just fall straight down and avoid that saw blade altogether. First saw blade I think we've seen in the whole hospital. I guess Dr. Fetus didn't have as much time to set up. Lasers. I'm not sure what's with these lasers, what they're supposed to be. Maybe... Yeah, I got nothing. I can't think of what application these lasers would have in this hospital. Usually, if you want, you can go around to the left and climb up that wall and completely avoid these lasers altogether. It's tricky, but it's possible. And you just run straight for it. You can use that little alcove that was just behind me and use that to duck into safety for a little bit, but it's just easier to run on ahead, and honestly, you gotta know how to take risks. But as we saw there, sometimes you gotta know when to hold your cards and not get exploded by lasers. What is that even? Hospitals with lasers that explode things. And as we look in the background, we can see that day is slowly starting to come. And that's actually really pretty, if I do say so myself. That bandage taunted me for the longest time, and it's kind of funny how you get at it. Just keep going up and around. I probably already screwed this up, but actually the key to this one is patience. Because you just, see, you give it a few seconds and they go off, and you can get up and in here. And thankfully these little electrical things don't hurt you. There we go. And then you go up and around, and you gotta be careful there because you don't want to drop right out onto the laser and explode. I think this is the first level that used that sound effect. And I'm not sure why it's just this level. But, whatever. Get the key up here. Avoid the central laser, and explode in the syringes that surround the laser cannon. Yes, brilliant, Meat Boy. Brilliant, Deeb. That was not your fault, Meat Boy. I am the one in control. I do not blame you. You hang to the right, and there's Bandage Girl. Well, there she was, until Dr. Fetus punched her. And Daybreaker. This is one of my favorite levels in the game. It's one of those longer levels that you have to take your time with, or you'll explode and have to redo a lot of level. But I do generally like it. Genuinely, it is one of my favorite looking and favorite feeling. Doing this level was very tense on trying to clear all the levels in the hospital without dying once. Usually with each, in the Steam version of the game at least, there's an achievement. There's one achievement for clearing each world without dying once. So, and then another version for, well, we'll get to that later. And I've only gotten a couple of them because honestly, I don't have the patience or the skill, let's be honest here. I mean, I'd like to think I'm good at video games. I completed this game, but I'm not the best. Not by a mile. And I just do not have the patience for that kind of completion, for those kind of achievements, especially since some of the levels just get unfair. But enough about that. Let's get right to the boss, Chad. Chad. Chad's affection is going to kill me. This is Chad, C-H-A-D. That does stand for something, but I forget what, and the blood is rising, and we got... Meat Boy's kind of a prick. That was just completely unnecessary. Poor Chad. But, what can you do? Anyway, I think that's enough for one episode. See you in the next one.